upon the basics, just to recap what we've studied, and Mira can also, you know, like I can go through the basics quickly, and if there is any doubt you have, I can stop and explain it. Yeah. So, Mira, you are aware of the products that PeopleSoft provides, right? And you are already working on PeopleSoft, so you might be knowing that it has, like, you've worked on campus solutions, but it has products for HCM, FSCM, CRM, EPM, etc. So these are some of the products that PeopleSoft provides. Um, so HCM is basically for HR related activities, your recruitment and offer letters and your leave and timesheet and all those kind of stuff. Then FSCM is basically for your financials and supply chain. So your accounts receivable, payable, billing, then your general ledger. So that is the FSCM application. Then CRM is for customer relationship management. So basically for if you have a retail store or something, you can use CRM application. Campus solutions, you are very well aware, it is used by the universities for student financials and uh, activities related to back office work related to universities. Then the last one is this EPM, which is basically a data warehouse. EPM stands for Enterprise Performance Management. So you can see and forecast your company's performance. You can deep dive into the, like, it's kind of an data warehouse and analytics application. It is not in use very much, and organizations have started adopting newer technologies. So it could be Oracle EPM Cloud or any other data warehouse product. So these are the common products. And then in the architecture, you might have seen the video, right, Mira? Like where we were talking about this.
Yes, I have seen that.
Yeah. So we are going to deep dive into these components today. So which will cover the basics as well. So I'll skip this part. Next up is the PS admin responsibilities. So what a PeopleSoft admin does. You can go through this slide. Maybe I can take this up separately. I can go through this list separately with you. Like,
Okay.
I'll just skip this part as well for today. I'll go more into the architecture, what each component does, how it does it, right? And before doing that, I want you to be familiar with some of the terms which are related to PeopleSoft. So I've listed some of the terms here, and like it would be better if we are aware of these terms before we go to the architecture or before we start learning more about PeopleSoft. So let me go to this slide. Yeah. So Mira, there are two parts. One is the application, your PeopleSoft application, and when someone asks you which application version you are on, let me go to the notes. You would say you are on PeopleSoft 9.2. 9.2 is the application version, right? And uh, then there is something called People Tools. So there are tools for your development, data migration, your software is required to support application server, web server, these kind of domains. And that set of tools, that set of binaries is packaged as something called People Tools. And there is a different version to it. So 9.2 is your application version, and People Tools version will be different. It starts with 8 dot something. So the latest tools version right now in the market is 8.61 as of now, right? And you know that PeopleSoft delivers the bug fixes through something called PUM images. PUM stands for PeopleSoft Update Manager, and it releases image like every quarter, every, I think, around 4 months. So there is a like your application is associated with an image number that you've applied fully. So if you have applied, say, image 47 will contain all the bug fixes released till image 47. So in case you have applied this image to your full application, then you would say my application is PeopleSoft 9.2 and the product as well. For example, if it is FSCM, so you would say PeopleSoft FSCM 9.2 image 47, which means that you have applied all the bug fixes which were released till image 47. Is this clear?
Yes, Mohan, it's clear.
Yep. And talking about people tools generally does not affect your application functionality. It has more to do with the look and feel and other capabilities that specific to, like, data migration or any development enhancement, any look and feel enhancement, any configuration enhancement, those kind of things not which will not affect your application, uh, the way your application works, your modules work. Those kind of things will be covered in people tools upgrades. So the current people tools version in the market is 8.61. This is the latest one, and it is released every 18 months. So about, like, your organization might require you to upgrade the people tools version, say, every 20-24 months. Like, once this is released, you'll have to apply it on some environment, test it, then move it to another environment, test it, something like that. So this is the application and people tools version. So People tools is a suite of development and administrative tools used to build, customize, and manage PeopleSoft applications. So basically, all your development tool, all your configuration tool, uh, mm, like, to support your application, you need a lot of things, right? So for example, let me give you some examples. Say, developers would need something to develop the application, so that would be your application designer. Then for data migration, you would use DMS scripts, that is through data mover. Then you run something called Envision reports, and that is supported by psnvs.exe, which is delivered with people tools. There are PeopleSoft processes, different kinds of PeopleSoft processes. Those are also supported by people tools. So for example, your application engine, that is taken care by psae.exe, right? So these kind of tools, these kind of binaries, when they're packaged together, that is called people tools. Got it?
Yes, yes, Mohan.
Now next is DPK. So earlier, what used to happen, all these things, like, there are other softwares as well which are needed to support this. Say Tuxedo, WebLogic, Oracle database, and other stuff that was to be deployed manually. So earlier, what we used to do is you require, say, WebLogic, you require, say, Tuxedo, you require, say, JDK, which is your Java, basically, and then, say, you require Oracle database, your Oracle PeopleSoft database, to be specific. Now, all these things, these are, then, say, you required COBOL. Earlier, there was some other product for search framework, but now it is something called OpenSearch. Just a few months ago, it was Elasticsearch, which has been replaced by OpenSearch. Basically, it is the same product. The only difference is Elasticsearch has now moved to a licensed version, like you have to pay for Elasticsearch. OpenSearch is the open version of it. Like, it is the fork of fork of El- Elasticsearch 7.10. So it is basically a copy of ES 7.10, which was the last free version of Elasticsearch. And this is an open source project which is being continued and which is being used as a replacement for Elasticsearch in PeopleSoft as well. But functionality wise, configuration wise, everything is same in Elasticsearch and OpenSearch. It is very, very similar. So for search framework, you use OpenSearch now, starting from, I think, 8.60, some minor version. So starting from 8.60, you use OpenSearch. And on the initial versions of 8.60, we still had Elasticsearch. So for my current client, it is on 8.60, and they are using Elasticsearch. But if we had to upgrade now, we would use OpenSearch instead of Elasticsearch. So these kind of softwares were to be deployed manually. So you would go download WebLogic from Oracle site, you would go download Tuxedo from Oracle site, you would install them manually. Now what they have done is to make the process simpler. Now everybody knows that you need WebLogic, Tuxedo, JDK, PeopleSoft database to stand up a full PeopleSoft environment. Now, and it is required in a specific sequence. It is required with a specific configuration. So all that is known, what they've done is they've automated this process of deployment, and they are packaged as DPKs. So DPK stands for deployment kit, deployment package kit. So deployment package is a pre-configured set of files and scripts. So you get these binaries as well as the script which will automate it. And it is automated via something called Puppet. Puppet is a configuration and automation tool, uh, configuration and automation software, which is packaged inside a DPK. So a DPK will contain a Puppet. Then it will contain your files. Say if it is your PUM image, it will contain your people tools, it will contain your PeopleSoft database, it will contain your WebLogic and Tuxedo and all of that stuff, which is known as middleware. So when I say middleware, it means Tuxedo, WebLogic, these softwares which sit between your end user and the database. That is called middleware. So all these files are packaged together, and again we miss the scripts, are packaged together with automation scripts and a software to run that automation script. So when you install PeopleSoft using DPK, you would, Puppet is going to follow the scripts in sequence, and it is going to deploy these components one by one, basically. Got it? So this is an automated deployment which happens using Puppet. So there are different kinds of DPKs in the market. Like PeopleSoft provides different kinds of DPKs. We'll cover those uh, in the next sessions. Then comes application server. We know that it is the brain of your application. It executes the business logic. We'll discuss that in detail in our architecture that we are going to discuss now. Web server, again, we'll discuss it shortly. The primary purpose of it is to get the request from the browser and return the HTML response to the end user, like on the browser. Then process scheduler is the batch server where your bulk processing is done, something which is going to take more time. You would let those programs run on a separate server, on a batch server, which runs in background, which is a separate components than your application. Then comes Elasticsearch. So Elasticsearch is a software which we use for search framework, which is, there's a little correction. So from, I guess, 8.60 dot something, it is OpenSearch. Basically, the configuration and everything is same, but the name is now OpenSearch. Right. Then next is certification metrics. So when you have to install PeopleSoft, you have to check the compatibility, which Windows version is supported, which Linux, Solaris, Red Hat versions are supported. All those, all that information is present on Oracle support, and that information is called certification metrics. So it will give you the information of the compatibility um, of the PeopleSoft applications with other softwares. Next is OS package. So if I have to uh, like on say Windows machine, I'll give you a very familiar example. So on Windows machine, say you install Python or you install Java, you installed say Microsoft Office. These are all packages. So in case of Linux server, you would install say wget, you would install say zip, you would install unzip, you would install some other software, uh, like there are various softwares. So say Oracle prerequisite package, something like this. So the software bundles that you install on an OS is called a OS package. So when I say that, hey, one OS package is missing, wget is missing, install wget on a Linux server. You would have a certain command to install a package that we will see in the future videos, future sessions when we install PeopleSoft. So basically, any software uh, you install on your OS is called OS package, right? Then IP address, we all know what an IP address is. Every machine, whether it be client, a server, every component has a unique address, unique numerical address known as IP address. So we generally use IPv4, which is something like 10.34.56.78, something like that. So 4 digits separated by dot. Your computer also has an IP address, so you can execute ipconfig on your Windows machine and you'll get the IP address information. So every machine is identified by a unique number, unique address, which is called IP address. You got it? Any questions still here, both Sinu and Mira?
No, Mohan. No.
No more. Good. I'm good.
Okay. Yeah. Now, Sinu and Mira, these numbers sometimes they could be very hard to remember. For example, if I told you that, hey, you want to access, say, facebook.com, but you don't know what facebook.com is, for example, if Mark told you that, you would access facebook.com on, like my website, my social media website on this address, you remember this. So if you hit this, you'll get the login page of Facebook. I'm just giving you an example. If google.com was not a name, it told you, hey, you go to this page and you will get the Google page. It would be very hard to remember IP addresses, right? So to overcome this limitation, any IP address can be given a name which is called a domain name, right? Domain name, or you call it FQDN, fully qualified domain name, which is an easy to understand name. Say, for example, for this IP address, say you have assigned a name facebook.com, right? So this is your domain name. This is the FQDN. Now, next is, say, google.com. So any organization will have its own DNS server. Like if your PeopleSoft website is, say, internal, it will have its own DNS server. It can assign any name to its websites. So generally, you will not access the websites using the IP addresses. You would say your organization is ABC, right? So your PeopleSoft instance might look like, say, FSCM, FSCM dot peoplesoft.abc.com, something like this. Or if it's a CS application, cs.peoplesoft.abc.com. And to these DNS servers, you'll have some internal IP addresses mapped. So say 10.34.56.78, right? This is your, say, web server IP address, which you can also call it using this name. And say your CS application is hosted on another web server, which is 79. So a user friendly name for the end users, or for anyone for that matter, which is assigned to a specific IP address, is called domain name. And these domain names are stored on something called DNS, domain name server. Domain name server. So every organization most probably has an internal DNS server. And by the way, PeopleSoft generally is an internal application. Apart from, like some pages of campus solutions, they might be exposed for, say, admissions, or some page of HR application might be exposed as, for recruitment or something. But generally, PeopleSoft is a very internal application used for the back office tasks. So it will have a user friendly name which is called domain name, and the domain names are stored on uh, domain name server, right? And yeah, now coming to the next term, port. Now any service that you provide, say when you say a server, what is a server? One who serves. One who serves is a server, or one who provides services. One who provides services. Now, say every server is going to have an IP address, right? And it's not that a server can provide only one service. So if it provides, say, 10 different services, how are you going to differentiate between those services? Where it is like server has to listen to, like to the, like, for example, this is the client. It is going to reach out to the server, which has an IP address, say 10.20 something, right? And it wants to access a service, which is your, say, FTP service. Now, server has to provide this service on a specific port. It like client would need two information. One is the IP address or the domain name, and second is the port. So for FTP, the default port is 21. So this means that the server is exposing its services, FTP service, on port 21, right? And like, so to invoke that service, to invoke the FTP service, client has to reach out to the server on this specific port. If client is sending request to the server on, say, 222 port, it is not going to get this FTP service. It has to specifically request on port number 21 with correct request data. Then only server can respond with a valid response. So this is how it works. So client has to invoke the services, client has to request for the services on a specific IP address and a port. Is this clear?
Yes, that is good.
Yep. Okay. Now I will talk about the default ports. So say if the server is providing HTTP services, that would be known as web server, correct? If it is providing HTTP service, it is called web server, and the default ports are 80 for HTTP and 443 for HTTPS. So if you're using these ports, you don't have to specify the port number. So say if I give google.com, uh, I gave this google.com here, but this is not actually google.com. It is google.com colon 443. Because 443 is a default port, if I don't provide the port number, it will assume that it is 443. Got it? So the protocol here, if you see the URL, it has a protocol, and then it has the host name or the domain name, and it would have a port number. So if you don't give any port for a website, if it is HTTPS, it assumes that it is 443. If it is HTTP, it assumes that it is 80. Is this clear?
Yes, yes,
Yeah. Are you with me? Yes. So
yes,
now,
Mohan.
in in our context, in PeopleSoft's context, web server will have an HTTP port, right? You have to specify this port. Admin is responsible to specify this port. You can have different ports as well. It's not necessary that you can use only 80 or 443. You can use anything starting with 8. Like that is the norm. Anything starting with 8, say 8000, 8001, 8400, anything that you want to use. So web server will listen on HTTP port, on some port number. Then application server is going to listen for the request on something called JSL, which is Jolt listener. So let me write in bracket Jolt. It starts with 9000. So the default port is 9000, but you can change it. If you have say multiple application servers on a single machine, you'll have to use different ports. Now just remember that if it is providing one service on a port, it cannot provide any other service on the same port. So if it is using 21 port for FTP service, it cannot reuse 21 for HTTP service or 21 for say Jolt listener, right? So one port can be used by only one service. Is it clear?
Yes, Mohan.
Yeah. Now next is a database server. It has something called listener. So listener starts, the default port for listener is 1521 in case of Oracle database, and this can be changed as well. So uh, the the takeaway from this is every server needs to provide its services on a specific port. A port cannot be reused by any other service. So if you have used this web server's port here, 8000, so you have used 8000, 8000 cannot be used by any other service on the same server. So on one machine, one port can be used for only one service. So web server is going to use HTTP port, app server, JSL, Jolt port, database server, there is a listener. Listener port is 1521 by default. All right. Next is
So here I have
next
one
is
question, Mohan.
mhm,
You just said that there in one single machine there can be multiple app servers.
correct.
Yeah. So I didn't get that.
Right. I
Multiple
will
app servers.
explain that. Right. I'll explain that. Uh, I have one detailed diagram, so I will go into that shortly. There are only two terms left. So PIA, we are very much aware now what PIA is. PIA basically is the web application. Uh, it is like web based application which is used by the end users to access your PeopleSoft services from the browser. Next one is log. So your any service, say your web server, is going to write what it is doing to a log file, web server log file. So here in case of WebLogic, it is something called PIE underscore weblogic.log. So if any issue arises in your environment, the first thing you should be checking is the log file. Like if it is issue with the web server itself, you would go and check the log file. So log file basically is a file where any service running would be writing what it is doing. So it depends on the uh, log level which is set. So there are different log levels for the services. If you just want say info messages, like if you want all the messages info, like informational messages, you can set it to info. Then if you want only warning messages or error messages, that kind of log level can be set. It is different for every service. So depending on the service, you can have a smaller log, more detailed log, like however you want it. So log file basically is where a service would write what it is doing. Okay. Now coming to your question, let me open this diagram. Yeah. So this is basically a full-fledged PeopleSoft applications architecture. For making it simple, what I've done is we'll start with the browser. So in the browser, what a user does, he enters the PeopleSoft URL, right? This is the first entry point, right? So hope you guys are with me, Sinu and Mira.
I don't see
So
Sino in the list.
let's continue. So this is the entry point. Mira, you use this application day in and out, so you
Yeah.
know how to access a PeopleSoft application. So
Mm-hmm.
you would enter the URL in the browser and it will give you the response here, right?
Yeah.
Now, whatever you do on the screen is going to be sent to something called web server. the next component that it hits is the web server, and whatever you do is sent, like this is a channel, this is a TCP channel, over which you will be sending your HTTP request. Your HTTP request will contain your URL, your request body, your headers, your cookies, all these things, right? So you would be sending whatever you do on the browser, it will be sent to the web server in form of an HTTP request, right? And to make you more familiar with this, let me go to, let me open something called developer tools. So if you press F12 on a browser, you would see that like a dialog will open where you can basically see whatever is happening in the background. So if you go to network tab and say I enter say google.com I entered. So when I enter google.com, there is a lot of stuff going on, and as soon as I say, let me go to the last thing and let me search something, uh, PeopleSoft. So as soon as I entered, some activity is going on here, and it is making these HTTP requests in the background. So if I press space, it is sending a new request. If I uh, type something, it is sending a new request. When I click here, it is going to return me something. So let me click off on any of these requests, right? So if you see, this is what it has sent. So if you go to headers tab, you can see the raw HTTP request that was sent to the Google server. So the request URL, the request method, the status code is like what you get in the response, the remote address. I was saying that, if you don't give the port number, the default port is 443 for an HTTPS site. Now we are on https google.com, and you're seeing that the remote address is this IP address and the port number is 443. Is it more clear now?
Yes, yes, yes. It is more clear.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And google.com is a user friendly name. It translates to one this IP address, and who translates it for you? The DNS server. So every computer has a DNS server configured. Your laptop, your server, any machine has a DNS server configured that is going to give you the correct IP address for the DNS. So like that's a separate topic altogether, but the thing to know here is DNS server is going to give you the IP address. You would reach out to that server on a specific port where this service is up, correct? You would be sending the HTTP request. With each HTTP request, you would send the URL, request method, then it will be sent on the remote address and the port number. Then there are some other stuff as well. So these are the response headers, like what you got in response, but there are something called request headers as well. So you would be sending this information as well to the server. So all the things that you see in request headers are sent by your browser automatically, right? You don't have to do this manually. So once you send the request headers, request URL, I can go to application and then click on cookies, right? If I expand this, I can see google.com. These are the cookies which were sent, right? So this is a separate topic altogether, but when an HTTP request is sent, it sends a whole lot of information. Some examples are the request headers that you saw here, right? The URL, the request body. So if you see, yeah, okay. I don't think it does not contain a request body because it's a GET request. In POST request, you would see the request body as well, and then some cookies. So all this information is sent to your web server through an HTTP request. Is it clear till now?
Yes, it is clear, Mohan.
Mm, Yeah, no problem. So what I was saying is, when a user does anything on his browser, it directly translates like whatever the activity the user is doing, it translates into HTTP requests. Now, each HTTP request will contain a lot of information. For example, the request URL, the request method. If you scroll down, you can see the uh, request headers. So all this information is sent, and server will respond with the response headers and the actual response. Right. So you would send all this information to the web server with an HTTP request, which will contain cookies, headers, body, etc. Now, in this diagram, to make it easier for you to understand, wherever you see this yellow dot and ears, right? Those are the listeners. Those These components, these boxes are listening for the requests. Like if the web server is up, it is listening all day for the requests. It does not matter if clients are connected, not connected, if someone is sending requests or not sending. It is always listening for requests. For example, have you ever seen that google.com, like you enter google.com and you are not able to access? No, right? Whenever you want to access, you put google.com, it will return you the response because it's all like always listening. So this web server is going to always listen, and it is listening on which port? HTTP port. So whatever is written in the yellow box is the kind of port it is listening on. So web server will listen on HTTP port. Is this clear?
Yes, Mohan.
Yes. Yeah. Now on the web server, to handle different kinds of requests, you have different kinds of files. Now, have you guys worked with Java earlier? Like any knowledge of Java you have? Like basic, very basic.
No, I haven't
Okay.
worked.
Do you know what?
No,
Okay. Do you know
no,
what a
Mohan.
servlet is, Sinu? Okay. So in a PeopleSoft web server, you have different kinds of servlets sitting on these folders: portal.war, psigw.war, psemhub.war. So first of all, what is a war? What is a war file? War simply means uh, web archive, right? Or you can say it is a zip file for a website. In very simple terms, zip file is the uh, most common archive file that you know. You both are aware of zip files, right? Like you can extract them and you will get the files. Similarly, for a website, you have web archive. So PeopleSoft application is deployed as a web archive. It is there as some WAR file sitting, and inside those WAR files, you have different servlets, right? So servlet, what is servlet? Say, um, okay, let me give you a simple example. Say you have a site called mm, booktickets.com, right? Now, when you have this website and you have a URL which is say book, then you say cancel, then you say update. Okay, these three URLs. So when you hit this URL with slash book, it will let you book a ticket. When you go to cancel, it will let you cancel a ticket. If you go to update, it will let you update an existing ticket. You are with me till now?
Yes, Mohan.
Yeah. So these endpoints, the code, this code, something is written on this endpoint URL, right, on the server side. So your server is getting slash book when it goes to your server. It is getting slash book when this request goes to your server. It is getting dot slash cancel. If this is going to your server, it gets slash update. Now there is some file sitting on the server, uh, you know, like say book.java. Let's directly take Java as example. There is something cancel.java, right? And then you have update.java. So when you visit this page, this code is going to be executed and it will return you the page. So the code sitting on the server, these are the servlets which will do specific like your web server is a whole big service, right? It's a whole big service. Google.com, on google.com you can search for images, videos, all. You can click on the links, you can, you know, do the filtering and all. There are so many functions that can happen on this page. So it's a whole big service. But when you click on any button, say PeopleSoft FSCM, this is a different functionality. It will hit a different endpoint. If you click on images, it will hit a different endpoint, right? What I want to convey is when you hit different endpoints, say slash book, slash cancel, it does different jobs. So one whole big service is divided into small services, right? So that small service is taken care by a small piece of code. Say if you want to book a ticket, whole website is booktickets.com, but you have small services inside it. One for booking, one for canceling, one for updating. And these services are taken care by small code sitting on the server. And these small services providing codes are known as servlets. You got it right. By the way, let's is for specifying small. Like for example, pig and you say piglet, right? So means a small little kid of a pig. So similarly, whole big service is your website, and then there are small blocks of codes which take care of specific functionalities, which are called servlets in Java. Is it clear now?
Yes, yes, Mohan.
Yes.
Yeah. Now all these files, say book.java, you have cancel.java, you have update.java. All these files, I have kept them inside booktickets.war. This becomes my website. Is it more clear now? This website's web archive contains these blocks of codes, right? Similarly, PeopleSoft is also a web application which has different WAR files, and inside those WAR files, you would find different executable, like
Servlets.
dynamic servlets. Exactly.
Yes. Yeah.
So, and this particular WAR file is, say, if I had to give you an example of PeopleSoft, there would say your application's name is, I've prepared one application right now. So I've named it FSCMU51. In that, you'll have portal.war. Now we are talking about PeopleSoft. You have psigw.war, which is, by the way, to take care of your integration. IGW is, it stands for integration gateway, right? So psigw.war, and then you have psemhub.war. There would be a couple of .wars more, and this is inside a base folder, which is known as your web server domain. Okay, web server domain. So in a domain, you'll have these files, and this is PeopleSoft web server domain. And in common terms, like in daily language, you would say PeopleSoft web server. You don't say domain all the time. So I say, hey, bring up FSCM 51 web server. So I mean, bring up this particular domain on the server, right? So you can have multiple web server domains on a single machine. So you have three applications. FSCM dev, then FSCM SIT, and then FSCM UAT, right? You can have these domains on a single server. Now, FSCM dev will also contain all these files. SF, this SIT will also contain all these files. UAT will also contain all these files. But these will be different folders sitting on your machines, web server machine. And all these will use different ports. So 8000, then say 8001, and say 8002. So on a single machine, say I have a machine named fscm web server.abc.com. This is my machine's name. For example, on a single machine, I can have fscm dev, fscm sit, fscm uat. And what are these? These are all PeopleSoft web server domains, and each domain will contain a separate set of these files, and they can be brought up on different ports. So, Mira, you asked one question: how can you have multiple application servers on a single machine? So that is the answer. They're grouped under different folders, and we call them domain. And you can have as many domains depending on the capacity of the server. So you can have multiple web servers, multiple app servers on a single machine. The only requirement is it should have sufficient capacity, and it should use different ports. Got it?
Okay. So Mohan, here domain means generally can we say it's environment also like development environment, SIT
Correct.
environment? Okay, okay.
Exactly. So an environment. Let's talk about environment now. What you have: dev, SIT, UAT, right?
Production.
QA, and say prod, something like this. These are different environments. Now, when
Mm-hmm.
we say environment, it so say let's expand dev environment. It will have dev web server, dev app server, dev database, dev batch server, right? Collection of all these is one environment.
Mm-hmm.
Got it? So when
Yeah.
you say environment, it is made up of a web server, app server, like whatever you see in this diagram, right? All these components will be present in your environment. Correct? Now on
The
the web server, dev web
differentiator is the port. Sorry.
yeah. So for end users, what would matter? End users will need the web server name. If it is, you are exposing web server to the end users, you would need web server name and the port used by your environment, say for dev. So if you say, hey, give me the dev environments URL, you would say, hey, it's fscm web server abc.com colon 8000. Someone tells you, hey, give me URL for sit, hey, it is 8001. And say for uat, it is 8002. And the domain name is same, which signifies that they are hosted on the same machine. Although they are hosted on the same machine, they are different domains. They are inside different folders which have different set of configuration files. In those configuration files, you have different ports mentioned. Is it making sense now?
Yes, Mohan.
Sinu, for you, like, am
Yes,
I
Mohan.
going too fast? Just
No,
stop me
no.
if you are not able to understand or you want me to go slow, okay? Okay. So now, so you're clear, right? So this term is widely used in, like, while you are at work, they will say, hey, dev environment is down. Can you bring it up? So you would go check where the issue is. If it is web server, you'll bring the web server up. If it is app server, you will bring the app server up. You say, hey, all my processes are not running. They are in queue, which means that the batch server is down, or batch server has some issues, or you've run a lot of processes. So basically your environment will consist of all these components. All these together will is known as an environment. right? So web server, now you're very much clear what a web server contains. And this boundary is one domain. You can have multiple such domains on the same machine. Clear till now?
Yes, Mohan.
Yeah. Now let's move to application server, the server where your business logic is executed. Now here also you see listeners. There are two listeners mainly. One is the Jolt listener, right? That is called JSL, and the other one is workstation listener. So we'll talk about it, uh, what workstation listener is. But first, let's concentrate on what a Jolt listener is. So Jolt listener is going to listen for Jolt requests sent by your web server. So what happens is, as soon as it gets the request here, it will transfer that request to the application server, which is always listening on this JSL port which you have configured. Okay, so app server is always listening on a Jolt port, which usually starts with 9,000. Like you can have 9,000, 9,500. Like it starts with 9 basically. This is the common convention. Now it is this port should be like open for communication so that web server can send the information on this port. Once app server receives information on JSL, which is a Jolt port, there is something called Jolt handler. H stands for handler. So once it listens, this is the entry point. So once this listens, that's its job. It has gotten the request. It will hand it over to the handler, Jolt handler. Okay, and there are multiple handlers which you know say it received the first request. First handler will take care of it, right? Second request, second handler will take care of it, something like that. Now these handlers are responsible to put the request in proper queue. So I'll try to explain this by giving an example of, say, a restaurant. So say there is a customer, right? He has on his table, he has a table. Oh, okay, let me, or okay. So here is the customer. He has a table in front of him. On the table, there is a menu card. Um, there is a plate, an empty plate, by the way. So sorry, man. Right, there are some bowls in it. Now here is a waiter, right? This is the waiter. Now let's partition it. Here is the actual chef who is going to cook food. On here he has the cooking, pans and all, right? And then here's a rack of all the things lined up, like all the ingredients here, right? Are you following me?
Yes,
Yes, yes,
Mohan.
Mohan.
Yeah.
Yep. Now customer is going to read through this menu, and the analogy here is that this is the web page in front of the user. He chooses something from the menu, like he chooses, like he clicks, or like if we talk about the browser, he does some action on the browser. He reads it, and the request is going to go to the waiter now. Now tell me, does the waiter know how to cook food? Like what to do with those ingredients? Or like say if he has ordered something, say paneer butter masala. Does he know how to cook paneer butter masala? No, he
No.
does not have that capability. He does not have any brain. What it is going to do, he is going to tell that order, only the order. He's not going to tell how to make it, what is the recipe, because he does not know. He is going to tell it to the chef who is in the kitchen. Now, the chef has all the knowledge. He knows what to get from the rack, put it in specific order, do the processing here, prepare the food, return it back to the waiter. Waiter is going to go and put it back in front of the customer. With me till now? Now, this is the end user giving you the analogy of a PeopleSoft application. He is the end user, right? This table is the browser. It is only for presentation. It is only for presentation till here. Actually, till here, this is the presentation layer. There's nothing logical about it. Nothing that is going on, calculating the stuff and doing any kind of processing. This is just for presentation. So you have web server, sorry, browser. From here, the request went to the web server. Now, as we gave an analogy, waiter does not know how to cook. Similarly, web server does not know what to do with your request, right? It does not have any brain. So what it is going to do, it is going to just pass the menu item name to the application server. So whatever, like on this particular page, I've shown you that it sends the cookies and request headers and all that stuff. Web server does not know what to do with them. So he just passes that information to the application server, right? Now, application server actually knows what to do with the request. Now, this rack where all the ingredients is. Now, if you put mirchi powder, haldi powder, salt, everything separately, does your uh, dish cook on like does it cook automatically? Like keeping the ingredients does not mean that the dish will be ready, right? Someone has to prepare it. So even though you have data in your database, it is useless unless it is converted into something which is useful for the business. Do you agree?
Yes, Mohan, you're
Yes.
right.
Yeah. So the rack is like the database. It has all the data, but it is not the information. The, it will become information. It will become useful for the end user when application server does some processing with it, right? Say it said you have some figures, say in the database, you have some monthly figures. In Jan, how many admissions happened? Let me take example of this campus solutions. Feb में कितना admission हुआ? You have that data. Now, and you have number of students, the fees for each course and all that stuff in the database. But you want to know in each month what was the money that I earned from the fees. So that calculation, that summation and everything is done by the application server. So there is some code written in the database. So say, just assume that the recipe is also there in the rack. So this is what application server does. It first fetches the recipe. It first fetches the code from the database. Now it knows what to do with the data. So it will craft something called SQL statements, which can be fired against the database to get the data. So it basically is going to fire SQL. It is going to get data using SQL from the database and do some processing according to the recipe, which is again there in the database. So it will get the recipe, that means your code, it will get the data, it will execute as per the recipe, it will prepare some stuff here, give it back to the web server, which obviously does not have any brain, does not know how this got ready. He just serves it to the end user in a specified template. Got it? Makes sense?
Yes, yes, Mohan.
Now, just imagine this waiter guy, he has put his headphone, okay? He has put his headphone. He's not listening. End user, the customer is saying, "Hey, take my order, take my order." He's shouting, "Arey bhai, mera order le lo. This is what I want. I want paneer tikka masala." This guy is not listening. Will the end user get the response?
No,
Will he get the response?
No, no.
no.
No, right? So this is the significance of port. So his ear should be open to listen to the requests. Only then it will be able to provide his services. Make sense?
Yes, Mohan.
Now coming to real world scenario. When you are given a new server, no, when you have this web server machine, say Windows server or Unix server, it might happen that all the ports are blocked initially. You don't have anything open on the server because of, say, some firewall setup. There is something called firewall, and say because of some firewall rules, you have all the ports on web server blocked. They are not open. This is similar to this waiter not listening for requests. This waiter having headphones in his ears. So this is a very common scenario in an organization where you get the server, but still you have turned on the web server, you have started the web server, everything is done. Now you're wondering why you're not able to open the site from the browser. The reason could be the port is not open, right? So this part is very important. Your port is there, you've used the port in the configuration, but the port should also be open for communication from the end user. So there should be an open channel from the client to the server. Is it clear now? What is the significance of port and uh, like, is it making more sense now?
Yes, yes, Mohan.
Yeah. So we will jump onto this again. So Jolt listener, now it will become very easy for you to understand all this. Listener, he has listened, right? Maybe here is a head chef, sorry. Head chef is there. He is the handler. He says, okay, I have to give paneer tikka masala. He's the, sorry, he's the listener, for example. He's the listener and he is the handler. Next person is the handler. Now, handler's job is to put the requests in correct queues. So this application server, application server, it runs on something called Tuxedo. Tuxedo is an Oracle's product. So it works on this technology, Tuxedo. And Tuxedo is a transaction monitor as well. Transaction monitor, it is used for app messaging. It is, all these purposes. So the main benefit of it is, even if your services are busy, they can keep piling up in queues, right? So say uh, there are different server processes to different to handle different uh, activities. So you are doing a online transaction, it will be handled by something called PSAPP SRV. There is a specific process on app server, PSAPP SRV, which handles only online transactions. Whatever you do from the browser, they're handled by 90% of the tasks are handled by PSAPP SRV. There are other services as well that like query serve, which handles the PS query requests, and but most of the online transactions are handled by PSAPP SRV. Now, if PSAPP SRV is busy, it is not going to return that, hey, server is busy. No, it will not do that. It will keep piling up the requests in the queues, and there are different queues for different services. So say for PS APP SRV, you have APP queue. For SAM serve, you have SAM queue. For query serve, you have query queue. So the purpose of the handler is to get the request from the listener and put it in the correct queue. Got it? And whenever this server process gets a chance, it picks up the oldest request from the queue, processes it, gives back the response. The next item processes it, just like this chef. He might have gotten like 5 orders. So whatever he got first, it is he's going to prepare that, give it back. Then he will pick up the second order, prepare that, give it back. Third order, same to same. So you handler is going to place it in specific queue, right? The server processes are going to pick items from the queue, process them, and return it back to the web server. That is how it happens in an app server. So listener, entry point, handler takes the request from the listener, keeps it in the correct queue. Then comes the server process. It will take the oldest item from the queue, process it, and return back the response. Now, when I say process it, it will again fetch the data from the database. It will run the code. It will prepare the HTML for the component. Like it does all the processing, and whatever user needs to see, it will convert that in form of an HTML page. So that HTML data is returned to the web server, and web server is going to return that to the browser. And in the database, there are mainly 3 kinds of data. The first one is application table, where your application data resides. So say you have a module. So Mira, there is a module called student financials in this, right? Campus
Yes,
solutions.
yes, yes, yes. Student financials.
So say the student financials related data is actually the application data. It is actually you can call it transactional data as well. So you do all the transactions and those tables are populated.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, transaction tables. So this is the application data, but the look and feel, the code, the setup data related to PeopleSoft, all this is metadata, right? Metadata is what metadata means: data of data, data about data. That is metadata. So there are separate tables which only store application metadata, right? Which would cover the base of PeopleSoft application. So the look and feel, the code, the setup tables, and all of that, which do not usually change very much. So those are application metadata tables. And then there is something called portal registry. We'll come to that when we navigate to the application. But for now, just understand that there are different kinds of tables in the database, and they store different kinds of data. So application tables will store the data related to the modules. So in case of FSCM, I'm very close to FSCM, so I can give you more examples. So accounts receivable, accounts payable, e-procurement, then billing. These are all the modules, right? So any accounting data, ledger data. So you have GL as well as one of the main modules. So these kind of tables related to these modules will be stored in the application tables, also known as transaction tables. Then comes the metadata, which will be stored in application metadata tables. Then is portal registry. Basically, portal registry means your navigations, whatever you navigate in your application. Those are the portal registries. Now, yeah, do you need a break, or it is okay if I continue for next maybe 10 minutes?
Yeah, continue, continue. I don't have much.
Okay,
So I have one
okay.
question here. Portal registry is that, does that mean a component you need to register when you
Correct,
create
correct,
a
exactly.
component? Oh, okay.
So like for your knowledge, when you create a component, you would be registering it under some menu. In inside menu, you would create some menu item, right? Inside that menu item, you would register a component which would be registered under like some permission list. So all this
Okay.
related data related to your component is called portal registry, right? So
So,
yeah, basically this is portal registry. So anything that you can navigate from the application is stored in form of portal registry. And the application that you use in the front end, it is also called portal, by the way. So that's why it is called portal registry, right? Then comes the process scheduler. Again, process. By the way, when we discuss this, all these components, they're part of an application server domain, which is again based on Tuxedo. So again, when we talk about an environment, it will contain an app server domain. So on one server, VM, you can have multiple app server domains. So you can have app servers for your dev environment, SIT, UAT, QA, prod. But what is the prerequisite? They should all use different ports. That is the only requirement. So you can have multiple app server domains on a single machine, but they should be using different ports. That's the only requirement. And you should have capacity on the server. It's not like you have just 8 GB of RAM and you can have eight application servers. That's not possible. So depending on your capacity, you can host as many applications as you want. Right, coming to the process scheduler, which is very similar to application server, but you might have noticed one thing. There is no yellow dot or a listener on process scheduler. So that's very important. And you know because process scheduler does not provide any services, right? It is, so for example, web server provides HTTP services, app server provides these services on Jolt, database server provides database services on this listener. Process scheduler always acts as the requester, as the client. So there is no port that is to be opened on an app server, which is an important point, especially Sinu for you. If someone asks, do you have to open any port on the scheduler? You say no, because it does not listen to anything. Uh, so it is very similar to application server. Again, it is built on Tuxedo, and you have server processes here as well, just like app server, but the function of those server processes are different. In case of application servers, they would handle the online transaction, your workstation, this workstation listener connections, your query services. But in case of a process scheduler, you would have processes related to processes. I mean, PeopleSoft processes. For example, PSPRCS SRV. This PRCS SRV is responsible for polling to the database. What is polling? Polling is basically checking every 15 seconds. If what process scheduler is going to do is it is going to check for new process requests which are stored in the database. So basically, the user is going to create process requests through this flow, this online transaction. Those process requests will be stored in the database. So user is going to use the application and he will submit process requests, and those will be eventually landing in the database tables. So I'll write the table names as well: PSPRCSRQST and PSPRCSQUE. These are the table names where you would find the data for the processes. So user is going to use the application, submit the process requests. Those process requests will be stored in some tables. Now the function of process scheduler is to poll to the database every few seconds, 10 seconds, 15 seconds, and get the new process requests. So say it when it polls to the database, it received two new process requests, right? Say the requests are run an app engine, run an app engine, and or you call it AE, and run one SQR process. Right? These are two process requests. Then it is going to assign that to like another server process. So these AE and SQR, they will be handled by different processes. So AE SRV, and for SQR it is going to execute something called PS SQR. So there are different services, different executables which will take care of those processes. And once the processing is done, it will generate the log and output files. And those log and output files are generated on the same machine, process scheduler machine. But for the users to view those log files, it has to transfer those log files from here to the web server, right? So that is taken care, the transfer of log files. This is taken care by another service, PSDST-SRV, which is the distribution agent, right? So basically, there are different processes, different server processes for different tasks, right? And they run inside a process scheduler domain. Again, you can have multiple process scheduler domains on one machine. So, Sinu, it might be a bit hard to understand right now, but I'll show you in the application as well how you submit the process requests, how it uh, how it is processed, and how you can see the log and output files in the browser. This whole process I'll show you in the application.
Okay.
So got it. So this is process scheduler, very similar to application server. Other components I'll leave it for tomorrow. They're just the supporting uh, components here, but the main components are these. We have covered them in very detail. Last thing I want to show you is I want to bring up the application, and I want to show Sino how a PeopleSoft application looks like. Maybe we will submit a simple process request, see how it is picked by the scheduler, and how we can see the log files. So this is a Linux server, first of all, right? And the black screen that you see is known as terminal. What it is called terminal. Got it? And with Linux servers, you would interact like this only. You will see a black screen. You would fire some commands, interact with the domains, and that's it. Like that's how you interact with Linux servers. With Windows, it's a bit different. You will see the GUI, like normally how you see your Windows uh, machine, right? Your laptop and all. Similar interface you'll have for Windows servers. So I have set this up on a Linux server, and we are going to start the application now. So I've logged in with this user, PeopleSoft. PeopleSoft is the user. If I uh, enter this command ID, it will show me with which user I am logged in. So I'm logged in with PeopleSoft user, right? And I'm part of some groups. So PeopleSoft again, like if you have, let me give you an example. On Unix, if you have created a Sinu user, it will by default be part of Sinu group. So this is a user, this is the group. But the PeopleSoft user should also be part of a group called O install. So this is mostly true for all the Oracle applications. So there is a group O install that it should be part of, right? So when you enter command ID, you will be able to see with which user you are logged in, and which groups you are part of. So as you can see here, I'm part of O install as well. Are you guys with me?
Yes, Mohan.
Yeah. Okay. Now we uh, like in the last session we talked about PS admin command. So Mira, there is a utility PS admin using which you will interact with the domains. By domains, I mean web, app, batch, right? So let's execute that command. And before doing that, I'll go to the directory app PeopleSoft, go to PT where my PeopleSoft is installed. I have to execute this file script, environment script, and I'll explain you what the purpose is of the script. Let me open the script. This script is going to set all the environment variables required by my application. For example, Java options. How do you export an environment variable? By writing export environment variable name equal to variable value. So when you say export variable name variable value, it means you have exported an environment variable. And when you refer this using var name, you will get the value which is currently stored in it. This is how you call an environment variable or any variable for that matter. So before interacting with the application, I need some environment variables to be exported. Those exports are taken care generally by the profile file. So this is by default created by PeopleSoft installation, but I have to put it in something called profile or bash underscore profile. We'll come to that later. But for now, just understand that this is the script which sets the environment variables. Right? We'll go into more detail when we talk about the installation of PeopleSoft. But for now, I have executed the script which sets the environment variables. Now I'm going to execute ps admin command. When I execute ps admin, it gives me a menu based like options in menu format. So I can select one for application server, two for process scheduler, three for web server, like that. Are you with me till now?
Yes, Mohan.
Yes.
So PS admin is a very, very common command that a PS admin would use, PeopleSoft admin will use to interact with the domains, whether it be Unix or Windows systems. On both, it will work. You open the command prompt on Windows, you execute this, you'll get the same menu, exactly the same. Now, if I want to see what application servers are on this machine, I'll go to option one. When I go to option one, it asks me for a, another input. So I would say administer a domain, which means I want to see the domain and interact with it, do something with it. So if I go to administer a domain, it tells me that there is one application server with the domain name appdom, appdom. That's my application server domain name. Got it? I'll go and select one. As soon as I enter the application server domains menu, I can start that domain. Boot this domain means start it. Shut down means you shut it down. Status means I want to know the status of it. Right? Configure, you can change the configuration, something like that. So I would first check the domain status. Let's check if it is up or down. When I press 3, it tells me if I want to check the server status, client status. I am interested in server status. It is going to do the check and it says domain is not started. Got it? Because it is down right now. I'm going to bring it up. Let me choose option one, boot this domain. It asks me if I want to boot it serially or parallelly. So I will go with serial option, which will start the services one by one. In parallel boot, it will start the services all at once. So Now we have to observe carefully. The first service that starts in an app server domain is BBL. BBL is the first service that starts. We'll go into more detail maybe tomorrow what BBL is and all these services are. But just understand that before starting any service, BBL is the one which starts first. Then it will start other processes. So other processes as in watch serve, PPM serve, app serve, app serve. We talked about this app serve here, right? Domain process. Now there are multiple app serve processes. Why? There are two actually here. So why two app server processes? I can have more as well. So depending on the load, how many users are going to connect, I can configure multiple server processes, multiple instances of server processes. So PS app serve, SAM serve, there are some IB related other services. Basically, it has started all the services in sequence. Now it says 16 processes started. If there was any error here, it would stop. It would stop here and tell me that it failed or something. And it will ask me to check the log. But now I can see that application server has started. Let's come back from this menu. So I will press Q. I have to start the process scheduler as well. So I went to option 2, process scheduler, administer a domain. There is one domain, PRCS DOM. I'll go here and I'll boot it. Boot as in I'll try to start that process scheduler. Again, it's a tuxedo domain, and you can see the first process that started is BBL, right? Then it will start other processes. So for example, RTI SRV, which is for real-time indexing, then PSAE SRV, which is specifically for application engines. It will start DST SRV, PRCS SRV as well. Let's wait for that. Yeah, so it has started DST SRV, which is basically responsible for distribution of the logs. So it transfers the logs from process scheduler to web server. That's the purpose of this process. Then there is PRCS SRV. I the polling thing. So it goes and checks for the new processes. That is the purpose of this. So my scheduler is up as well. Let me bring up the web server. So administer a domain, PeopleSoft, and then let me see if it is up or not. So get I've pressed 3 and it says domain status stopped. So I'm going to boot this domain. So this we are booting the web server. So here it will not show any processes or anything. It's not based on Tuxedo. It's a simple WebLogic domain. It will start the website shortly. So it will show the progress here. So it is now in starting stage. When it gets into running stage, that's when the web server is up. So it changed to standby starting. Let's wait for it to display running. Sorry, this was a very long session. Are you guys tired already?
No, no, not at all.
No more.
Interesting actually.
Okay. So this web server has started and it says the server state has changed to running. This is very important. These are the checkpoints. So when your app server or scheduler starts, normally it would say some number processes started. If it fails, it will not show this message. It will ask you to check the logs. It would be a very clear and clear cut message. In case of a web server, when it changes to running state, that's when you know that the web server has started. Now let's verify the process here. So ps-ef, it will list the processes on the Linux servers. So I'm going to write some of the commands here. Just take a note of them. These are very common commands that you would need. So ps-ef basically will list all the processes running on it. grep is the command to filter the results. So I want to find string java in all the processes. So all the processes that are running, I want to get the processes which have java word in it. So I'm going to execute this command here. So grep java, and if your web server is started, it will show one process, like one big process like this. And if you see at the end, it says weblogic.server. And if you want to see from where it has started, you can see here. This is the domain, the PeopleSoft domain, which we started. Right? We'll go into detail later, but for now, just know that you can see the process like this: ps-ef grep java. Now let me, and you can search any process which is running on this server. Say I want to see how many ps app srv services are running. I can say ps-ef grep ps app srv. Now I can see two processes. This is the command that we executed, right? The grep command. So you always have to exclude this. In case of the above result also, it says java, right? grep java. This is the command that we executed. Again, the command that we execute is also a process on the OS, right? That's why it is listed here. So ignore the last line, but the above lines, you can see there are two PSAP PSRV processes. And in this result, if you see, first one is the user who has triggered it. Second one is the PID, the process ID for this process. So this process has process ID 5431. This one has 5495, right? And when it started, so 1557. So if I want to see the current date, I just have to execute date. So it is now 1604. So it had started 7 minutes ago, right? 1557. This is the start date, right? So this is how you check the processes. I can check, say, PSAESRV, which is a process scheduler process. There are three PSAESRVs here. Now let's go to the front end URL of this application. I'm going to grab my DNS from here. Let's put it in the URL. Now, just see, I have this machine and the IP address for this machine is this 43.205.97.252. That's the server IP. Now, this IP address, if I go here and enter the IP address and say 8000 is the port, by the way, which is used by my web server. If I put this in the URL bar, I get a page, welcome to WebLogic application server. This is the index page for PeopleSoft application. This is the default index page. You can change it, and people usually change it, but this is the default page that you get. Now, I can either access it using the IP address, or I can go with the DNS as well. So AWS has provided me a DNS for this. So I can replace this IP address very well with my DNS. And let me open the developer tool as well. And if I execute this, if I hit this URL, I get the same page. And if I had to go check this, if you see, remote address is again the IP address. So this DNS server, the domain name, your browser has checked with the DNS server, hey, give me the IP address for this DNS. So it gave back this IP address, and it hit this server on this particular port, which is our web server port, right? So let me click on this. It will take me to the login page. So Sinu, this is the PeopleSoft login page by default. Organizations usually change it, or they most of the times use some SSO solution so that they don't have to log in at all. But this is the default login page for a PeopleSoft application. Okay, here you would enter your credentials, and you can choose your language if it is a multilingual database. So here my ID is VP1 and I'm going to enter my password and click on sign in. So as soon as I sign in, the first page that I see is called the landing page. So in the newer versions, the landing page usually have something called tiles. So this update manager, update scheduler, let me go to employee self-service. So approvals, e-procurement, expenses. This is an FSCM application, by the way. That's why you are seeing all these finance related information. So these are called tiles. First of all, this is a landing page, right? These are the home pages, different home pages. So you go to employee self-service, finance, accounting. These are different home pages, and you can scroll through here as well, like And on this home pages, you see these things, right? These are called tiles. Okay, these are called tiles. These are all your workflow notifications. So you can take action by clicking on this notification. That's out of the scope, by the way, but you just know that there is something called workflow notification, and you see that here on the right pane. Right here you have recently visited items. So if you have visited some pages earlier, it would give you the list of recently visited items. Here is the favorites list. So if you have saved any page as favorite, you will see it here. Right, this is accessibility, I guess. Yeah, this is accessibility. So for visually challenged people, or some, like the one who want to use the application with the help of keyboard, they can go to this accessibility menu, change the accessibility settings, basically. So right now you cannot scroll up and down using your arrow keys, right? So once you have this accessibility, like screen reader mode kind of thing enabled, you can use your mouse to scroll up and down and do all the transactions. So right, and the ones who want to use it using mouse, this is the normal mode. Right, if you click on this actions, you can open a new window. My preferences will go, maybe in this week we'll go through all these options, but remember, like here you can see these options. Now this is the navigator, the nav bar. If you click here, it is going to show you these options. You click on the menu and you get all these things, right? So that day we were discussing, Sinu, about folders and components and all of that, right? So these are the folders. Accounts payable is a folder, accounts receivable is a folder. If I go down, uh, the one interesting folder is people tools. So people tools folder is mostly used by admins to configure, to set up your PeopleSoft application. So people tools is a folder. If I go inside people tools folder, you have another folders. You have, like, you can click on, say I go to process scheduler. So I get all process scheduler related components here, and this is the component list. So sorry, I clicked by mistake. Um, I'll go to process monitor. So when I click on the process monitor link, it takes me to the process monitor component. So this is how a component looks like. Okay. So, and every component will have, you can see in the URL also what's the component name. So it usually starts with the menu name dot the component name. So the component name is process monitor dot GBL. GBL is it stands for global. So process monitor dot global. So uh, you can get the menu name and the component name from the URL as well. So as soon as you hit this component link, it will show this kind of a page. And here inside a component, there can be multiple pages. So process list is one page, server list is another page. So right now I just have one batch server. which is running on our Linux machine. So this batch server is currently is running state, right? So it is functioning properly. You can see the CPU percentage is 5 and memory consumption is 43%. So again, just to recap, you can navigate from here, navbar menu. In the menu, you have different pages, different folders. And inside a folder, you can have multiple folders or components. For example, main menu is a folder. Inside main menu, there are folders and there are some components as well. So once you navigate to the folder in which your component is, you click on the component link, something like this opens, an HTML page opens, and in this component, you can see multiple pages. And depending on your access, you will be able to see the pages. Like if you don't have access to server list page, you will not see this at all. This will not be here, right? So you can see process list and server list here. Now I'm going to run a process, and that would be end of our today's session. So let me go to people tools and then process scheduler, and then uh, where is that, schedule process requests. So so this is the page, this is the component for scheduling processes. And if you get something like this, like find an existing value, add a new value, this is called search page. So this is the search page for this component. What is the component name? Mira, can you tell me the component name from this URL?
Yes. Its menu is process underscore scheduler, and component is PRCSMULT multi. That is a
Right,
component name.
exactly. So if you have access to this component, you'll get this page. Let me scramble this name. Let me give some random characters here and enter what. Let's see what happens. What it says, you are not authorized to access this component. This message is very common when you hit a link which does not exist or hit a link which you don't have access to, you will see this message. So if you don't have access to a certain component, and if by mistake you clicked on that link or if you try to access that link, this is the message that you get. Let me go back to our schedule processes page. And on every component, like it's not mandatory that you will have a search page, but wherever you can add a new run control ID, you will have a search page, or you can search with some key values. You will have a search page so that you can find an existing value or you can add a new value. Now, run control ID is a random multi, like alphanumeric ID that I can give, but mostly what end users prefer is you give it a meaningful name. Like looking at it, you will know what you've done. So I will give it test 01, right? I will search for it. It does not exist right now, so I'm going to click on add a new value. When I click on add a new value, I can give the run control ID, click on add. As soon as I clicked on add, it will open the component for me with that run control ID. On this component, as you can see, there are different pages: process request dialog, component interface, process request people code. So I'm going to use only this page to run the process. I will click on run button, right? And when I click on run button, it will list all the processes that can be run from this component. So there can be many components from where you can run the processes, but it will contain the list of processes, like only those processes which can be run from here. So I am going to run simple AE test program. I'm going to select the scheduler. I just have one scheduler for now, so I'll select that. Here I can schedule it for the future, like I can give some future time. Maybe if I want to run it after 1 hour, I'll just change this 4 to 5. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to scroll down and click OK. When the process, this is the request that is created, and every process request has a process instance. This is unique for each run like each process that a user runs. So every run is assigned a process instance. You copy that process instance, click on process monitor link, it will take you to the process monitor page. And if you see, the run status is queued right now. Queued as in it is not picked up by the scheduler yet. So we were talking about this polling thing, right? So right now, PRCS SRV has not polled to the database and it has not got the new process request. After, if you check this after 5-10 seconds, it will be in processing or success depending on. So it's a very small process, so it has gone to success quickly. But generally, the sequences it will be in queued till your PRCS SRV accepts that process request. Then it will go to initiated, then it will go to processing, then it will go to success, no success, error, whatever. So you can check the different run statuses here. So the first status is queued. Queued means it is not yet picked up by the scheduler. As soon as it gets picked up by the scheduler, it goes into initiated state. That means your scheduler has accepted the request. It is going to start the execution of the process. After initiated, it will go to processing stage, processing where the actual process is actual processing is done. So it is actually executing the people code or any SQR or any code which is written for that process is being executed when the process is in processing stage. When it completes, it can either go to success if it completes successfully. It can go to warning if there are some warning messages. It can go to no success. It can go to error. So these are different statuses a process can have. So if there was no problem at all with the process, it will go to success. If there is some problem like a warning or something, it will go to warning. If it has failed, it can go to either error or no success depending on the process type and type of the error. So our process has gone to success posted. By the way, posted is the distribution status. So posted means the log files are transferred. So we talked about this process, right? Like process scheduler is going to run the process, generate the log files, and then PSDST SRV is going to transfer the log files to the web server. This arrow, this one. So this process of transferring the log files from process scheduler machine to the web server is known as posting is known as posting. So once the posting is done successfully, this status changes to posted. If the log files were not transferred successfully, it will go to not posted. Or if it is posting right now, it will have posting status. All these distribution statuses can be checked here. So it can go to posted, posting, not posted. These are the common distribution statuses. So let me go to details, and inside details I can see the parameters. So if I click on parameter, I will come to know what exactly was executed on the OS. So told you that the application engines are taken care by something called PSAE. This is the executable for your application engines. So you can see exactly what was executed on your OS, on your Linux server. It executed here, by the way, right? So PSAE, then some parameters. We'll try to understand these maybe in the next session. But for now, just understand that in the parameters tab, you can see what command line was executed. Then message log, any messages that it has written can be viewed here. Then batch timings, you can see the, okay, this is, yeah, it's a very small process. You'll not get any timing here. And then view log trace. So here it will show you the log files. When it is in posting status, this link will be disabled. Why this will be disabled? Because this process of posting, this process of transferring the files from process scheduler to web server is still in progress. So there is no point in showing you this link, right? This will be disabled. You can view this, but you cannot click on this link. So when the status is posted, only then this link will be enabled. And you can click on view log trace you can click on the log file. It will, okay. So I have to change this. I've started this VM today freshly, right? So the IP address has changed. That's why it is not showing me. I can change this to this. It should show. Yeah. So as you can see, this is the report. This is the log file, basically, the out file. So what it says, it's a very small process. It has not done anything major. Just says that it started on this, it ended normally, and it completed at this time, right? So this is where you can see the log files. So this link will be enabled only when your process is posted. Sinu, did you get like how the process is submitted, what all things are associated with the process, the run status, distribution status, log files? Could you relate to all this?
Yes, yes, Mohan.
Yeah. So this is how the PeopleSoft application looks like. This is
Mhm,
the common pattern component, and then
mhm,
you have multiple pages. Depending on your access, you will see the pages, the component, right?
mhm.
This is the banner area, the top one, right? And then you have this logout option and all these. By the way, if I want to add process monitor to favorites, I can go here and click on add to favorites. I can change the label, click on add, right? So Mira might already be aware of all these things, right? Mira, you have been
Yes,
using this
yes, yes,
like
I'm aware.
PeopleSoft
Mhm.
application. So once you add to the favorites, if you click here, it will show you the favorites here, process monitor.
Which version is this 9.21? This sorry,
Yeah.
Mohan.
So yeah, let me write that here. It is when someone asks you about the application, you say PeopleSoft 9.2. This is the
9.2,
application version, and it is going to be 9.2.
yeah. Mhm.
I guess
Only
there
the
is not
pump,
going to be.
yeah, you can
Right, exactly. This is
image.
image 51, which is the latest one right now. This is the latest image 51 for FSCM. So
Mm-hmm.
sorry, let me write the application name as well. PeopleSoft FSCM 9.2 image 51, and it is on People Tools 8.61.04, which is again the latest one. Like, not this minor version is not the latest, but 8.61 is the latest tools version right now in the market, right? So this is our application detail. PeopleSoft FSCM 9.2 image 51, People Tools 8.61.04. And this information, let me go to process monitor. If I want to see this information, I can click Control Shift J. Okay, so it's not enabled right now. We can enable this in web profile, right? So we can enable this option. It will tell you the People Tools version, the app server on which it is, all those details you can see. Maybe I'll enable it and show it to you tomorrow.
Okay.
So yeah, that's all for today. Any questions?
No, I'm good except that Linux command and all those things. I was seeing that first time, so maybe yeah.
Okay. Sinu, have you
So
worked on terminal before?
Yes, yes, Mohan. I have worked.
Okay, okay. So just to give you an like just in 1 minute, if I had to explain the common
mhm,
commands. So when you execute a command, it can be a command itself, and then you can pass some arguments to it, right? So if I execute ls means list this directory. If I click trigger ls command, it will list all the folders and files in this folder. If I want to see the present working directory, I have to execute pwd, present working directory. Pwd will tell me where I am right now. And as this is a Linux server, so in
mhm,
Windows, you start with C drive, D drive, right? So say C program files, uh, Microsoft, something like this. You'll have the folders, right?
Mm-hmm.
But on Linux, it starts with root folder. So the root folder is slash. That's the first
Okay.
folder, right? Then you have another directory, then you have another directory, then you have another directory, then some file, something, right? So this is the structure of a Linux file system. It starts with root. In
Okay.
Windows, it starts with the drive name, C drive,
Mm.
D drive, E drive, whatever it is, right? So, and in Linux, you have command, right? So you have, say, ls is the command. You can pass arguments to it. So say hyphen l is you list the contents, like you show me all the details, not just the folder or file name. Ls hyphen l will give you more details. So here it just listed the folder names and file names, right? Here it will tell you when it was created, who created it, which group has ownership, what kind of ownership this file has or the folder
Okay.
has, what kind of a file it is. So if it starts with D, it's a directory. If it
Director.
starts with hyphen, it's a regular file, right? Then the first letter is the file type. So if it is D, it is directory. If it is hyphen, it is a regular file. Then would be the permissions. So the permissions are in three sets. So yeah, so we can go in detail maybe later.
Yeah. No problem.
Like for now, just understand that you would interact with Linux system using command line, commands only.
Hmm.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. If
Yeah.
there are not
And
more questions, yeah, tell me.
where do we get this, or how do we get this recording of every session? Today's my first class.
Sumaya can provide the
Art.
recording. So she has
Okay.
already started the recording. She can provide the link.
Hmm. Okay.
Yeah. So maybe just search for the commands, common Unix commands.
Mm-hmm.